It is time for Football Happy Hour Mock Draft Edition, and this one is going to be from Pete Prisco. This is the draft order. You should know it by heart by now. Jaguars #1 going to take Trevor Lawrence, and then the question is at #2. Do the Jets stay there? Do they take Zach Wilson? Do they trade down? Let's figure it all out right now. I'm Chris Hassel, joined in studio by Pete Prisco, who has his second mock draft for us, and Ryan Wilson. Ryan, you just completed, what is it, 25 or so this week?
27 and a 3-rounder, so I get superseded by Prisco's second mock draft. Here we are.
27th mock, and it was a 3-rounder, but no. Pete did a mock draft, so we're going to spend a whole hour on that.
Well, you know, like you let the backup singer sing for a while, and then the star comes in and takes over. That's what's happening here with me.
Okay, so are you the backup singer?
No,
or
he's
star?
the backup singer.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. All right.
Now, Ryan does a great job, by the way. I could never do 27 mock drafts, ever.
You're going to do 3 or 4.
I'll probably do 4 or 5.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay, 4 or 5, good. So this one, #2 for Pete Prisco, starts off with the Jaguars taking Trevor Lawrence. No surprise there. But Pete, I was reading the article, and you wrote, the talk that he isn't the best quarterback in this class is laughable. Wait, who's saying he's not the best quarterback?
There are people out there who are saying that. There's a whole cult of crazies out there who think that Zach Wilson has a chance to. I mean, look, he has a chance, but to say he's better right now is ridiculous. They do a lot of the same things. Everybody raves about Zach Wilson's ability to move. Trevor Lawrence can run and move as well. One is 6'6", one is 6'1", and when you talk to teams around the league, the concern with Zach Wilson is his size. And I'm not talking about his height, Chris. I'm talking about his size. He's not a big guy. Trevor Lawrence, big, thick, tough, nasty football player. That's the difference.
He is the largest #1 pick favorite in NFL draft history. You got to put down a lot of money to get Trevor Lawrence at #1. At #2, Pete Prisco with his one and only trade of his latest mock draft. The Jets trading down, the Panthers trading up to take quarterback Zach Wilson out of BYU. Ryan, what did you think of that?
I love the idea of the Jets trading down, and this is the big dilemma once the draft starts after the first overall pick. What are the Jets going to do? Where are they on Sam Darnold? Pete said last week that there was some argument within the building about who wants Sam Darnold, who wants to move on from him. We'll have to wait and see how this sorts itself out, but I do like the idea of moving down for him. The Panthers trading up for a quarterback. They definitely need a quarterback. I know Matt Rule said that Teddy Bridgewater is his guy, but Teddy Bridgewater is his guy until the moment he ain't his guy. And if you want a quarterback and you love Zach Wilson, then certainly trade up for him. My only concern is, and something I want to see how this unfolds, is that the Panthers were one of the 2 coaching staffs in Mobile for the Senior Bowl. So they were only one of 30 teams to get to see all those 150 players. They were up close and personal with Mac Jones. If they like Mac Jones, I wonder if they stay put at 8 or maybe try to trade down a spot or 2 and get him there and save some of that draft capital, because they have a lot of rebuilding to do. And you can take Zach Wilson at 2, but then you have a lot of other needs that need to be built around him to keep him upright.
Look, I like Zach Wilson a lot. But again, he's not a big guy, but he fits with what the Panthers would want to do. Joe Brady likes this style. He likes to get the ball out. This kid can get the ball out. He's got all kinds of levels to throw from. His release is different than everybody in this draft, and he's got a big arm. I love Zach Wilson, but the whole compare him to Trevor Lawrence is ridiculous because one is 6'6" and one is 6'1". But if I'm the Carolina Panthers, I think there's a difference between Zach Wilson and maybe some of the other guys. So I make this move to go up and get him in this mock draft.
Ryan, are you running into the same people who are saying that Zach Wilson is the #1 quarterback in this draft over Trevor Lawrence?
No. In fact,
Where is
I was
Pete
talking
finding
to
these people.
I'm telling you, talk to teams. There are guys that think, there are scouts and personnel people who think Zach Wilson is better than Trevor Lawrence. And they're wrong. And I tell them they are.
Yeah, I agree that they're wrong. I've seen most of the talk on Twitter, but I was talking to a team this week, and they were saying they would take a player like Mac Jones, who has that high floor, low ceiling, over a player like Zach Wilson. And you don't hear a lot of that in the Twitterverse. And Pete and I were talking about this before the show. You have to be careful what you say on Twitter, because people will come after you with a vengeance. So I get sometimes we have, it's a time of year for smoke screens and obfuscation, but look, man, If your job is on the line as a general manager, no way are you taking Zach Wilson over Trevor Lawrence.
By the way, I will say that Ryan Wilson has to be getting a cut from the Mac Jones camp as much as he pumps him up. He's got to be on the payroll. I had a guy in the league tell me the other day he thought Mac Jones was a third-round talent. I don't believe that. And I disagreed with him, but when he told me that, I had to go back and watch some more. I don't think he's a third-round talent, but I could see where an A.J. McCarron comparison is there and relevant. I think it's legitimate, and Ryan loves him. I know Ryan's on board with him, so look, I respect the guy who sticks by his convictions, but I hear different, and I don't think he's that good.
I know Ryan's had him go in the top 10 a lot. We'll see where Pete Prisco has Mac Jones go. But at number 3, the Miami Dolphins taking a receiver here, Pete. And you're going with Jamar Chase, who's the #1 ranked wide receiver in this class.
Yeah, and a tough, physical receiver, probably as good as anybody at getting off the jam. And, you know, you talk to scouts and personnel people about DeVonta Smith. Look, he's a game breaker. He can change the game with one catch. But he's 180 pounds. When he gets NFL corners on him and they get their hands on him, we'll be able to get off of him. And that's a concern by a lot of scouts and personnel guys, whereas this kid is ready right now. He doesn't run the way those other guys do, those Alabama guys. Chase will be one of those guys who will be able to get off the jam and handle the physical part of the NFL game. He was better than Jefferson at LSU. That tells you something, considering what Jefferson did last year.
Okay, Chase number 3 to the Dolphins. And we've got another pass catcher going number 4. Pete has the Falcons taking the tight end Kyle Pitts. Ryan, I know you've had him land there as well in several of your mocks.
Yeah, I love this pick, and it feels like maybe the safest pick in the draft, and that includes Trevor Lawrence, because you never know how these quarterbacks shake out. It's hard to envision a situation where Kyle Pitts doesn't go into an NFL team and have a lot of success early on. Now, obviously, the fit matters. Atlanta seems like a really good fit. They have Hayden Hurst on a contract, but only for 1 more year. And if you want to sort of rekindle those Tony Gonzalez days, but with a better athlete, which sounds insane to say, Kyle Pitts is your guy. And I feel like in 3 or 4 or 5 years, we could look back and say Kyle Pitts was the best pass catcher in this draft class. I love it here. If you're the Falcons and you're going to go with Matt Ryan for 2 more years, there's no reason to draft a quarterback like the Packers did with Jordan Love and have him just sit there and stare at the wall. Get a playmaker for your quarterback, which I would imagine someone like Aaron Rodgers would love Kyle Pitts. I imagine also that Matt Ryan would not put up much of a complaint if Kyle Pitts landed in Atlanta.
When you look at the Falcons and who's taking over as the head coach, Arthur Smith loves to use double tight end sets. He likes having 2 tight ends on the field. One a pass catcher, one a blocker. When you look at Pitts, he's the pass catcher. You know, Hayden Hurst is a decent blocker. He's not a great blocker, but he's good enough. You have a lot of sets with 2 tight ends. I think Pitts would create matchup problems outside in the passing game for whoever plays him. He's not an inline guy. He's not going to block anybody, and that's always a concern. He tries. He's just not a good blocker. But as a pass-catching weapon, wow.
Okay, so we had back-to-back quarterbacks to start it off, back-to-back pass catchers at 3 and 4. And here come the Cincinnati Bengals at number 5. And Pete, you have him protecting Joe Burrow with Penei Sewell, who some would argue is the #1 prospect in the draft. The can't miss.
No, he is a heck of a player. I went back and watched some of his tape, and there's a lot of things to like about him. He's athletic as heck. I mean, he can get out to the second level. He's good in pass protection. He lacks, sometimes he lacks the toughness that I want to see from that position. But you talk about a guy who can pull and move and get up the field. He can do it all. And they would play him at left tackle. They'd move Jonah Williams from left tackle to right tackle. He played right tackle in high school, so he can make the move over to the right side. I think it's be a great pick for the Bengals in this spot.
You know, you have the same exact 5 players going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in that order as Ryan Wilson in his mock this week.
I've been copying him. I mean, he's done enough of them. But you know what? It'd be hard to copy him because he changes every one of them every other week.
You have to. When you're doing it every week, you got to make some changes. The only difference is that Pete had the Jets trading down from the 2 position, the Panthers trading up and taking Zach Wilson.
Which, by the way, I think the Jets should do. And I haven't taken the quarterback coming back out of that, but whether you take the quarterback or whatever, get out of that spot, play Darnold for a year. And people, the Jets fans got mad at me, but I heard this from people in the league that there is some split, that the coaching staff wouldn't mind playing with Sam Darnold while the front office is maybe leaning to moving him and playing with Zach Wilson.
Okay, that's the top 5. Moving on to number 6, the Philadelphia Eagles. And Ryan has been hearing it from Philadelphia Eagles fans, it seems like every week on Twitter with his picks. But Pete has him adding another Jaylen. They've got too many Jaylens already. Jaylen Waddle out of Alabama.
Again, you have Jalen Reagor, you have Jalen Hurts, and now you add Jaylen Waddle. I think this is one of those situations where you get faster. This kid is a game changer. He's got the ability to make people miss on the move and stop and start. He is going in the top 10. And I've had numerous people tell me 3 receivers will go in the top 10. That means Waddle, Smith, and Chase will all go in the top 10. So I think Waddle to the Eagles make a lot of sense.
Yeah, they need playmakers. Pete wasn't messing around about that. I mean, Alshon Jeffrey's gone. J.J. Arcega-Whiteside is a similar type player as Alshon Jeffrey in that he struggles to create separation. That is not an issue with Jaylen Waddle. He is open all the time, and it doesn't matter who's covering him. He will find a way to get open. I think he's a better player right now than Henry Ruggs was coming out. Ruggs was the first wide receiver taken a year ago. I do wonder, and I know that there's a report that the Eagles are trying to build around Jalen Hurts. That's what owner Jeffrey Lurie wants to do. But I just wonder, Pete, if they're sitting there and staring at a quarterback like Justin Fields or Trey Lance, they're just going to say, we're going to take a wide receiver and roll with Jalen Hurts no matter what?
I think they're gonna play Jalen Hurts and get a veteran quarterback in there. Maybe Tyrod Taylor or Andy Dalton, a veteran quarterback who could come in and help the younger player. I don't think they're going to draft a quarterback. I think they're going to find out what they have in Jalen Hurts. At least that's what I'm hearing. Now, we don't know that, obviously, until draft day, but I think they're really committed to Jalen Hurts.
In Ryan's latest mock, he does have them taking Justin Fields right here at number 6. Let's go to number 7, the Detroit Lions. Heisman Trophy winner DeVonta Smith is the pick from Pete here at number 7, Ryan.
I love it. I love DeVonta Smith. He's one of my favorite players in this draft class. He is, I don't even want to call him an overachiever because that feels like that's unfair. He is one of the best players we saw in college football. There's a reason he wants a Heisman Trophy. Pete touched on it earlier. He might weigh 170 pounds soaking wet, and that's the concern, the durability issues. He had no durability issues at Alabama, so there's no track record of him getting hurt, but you imagine the wear and tear of playing against NFL cornerbacks and linebackers hitting him, maybe that adds up. I love the fit because there are no wide receivers left in Detroit. They're not going to franchise Kenny Golladay. Marvin Jones and Amendola are going to be free agents, but I'll repeat the same question that I just asked Pete with the Eagles. Jared Goff is a guy. That's what he is. They traded for him, let Matthew Stafford go to the Rams. Again, if you have 2 high-caliber quarterbacks, maybe 3 if you're on the Mac Jones train like me, and you're the Lions, you're going to pass up on a potential franchise quarterback for a wide receiver. That's the only issue I have. Otherwise, I love DeVonta Smith all day long.
Yeah, I don't know if they just think that Jared Goff is just a guy that's placeholder. I think they think he's more than that. So in this scenario, I would think they would get a wide receiver. You look at their wide receiver situation, it's not good. Kenny Golladay, they didn't tag him. He's out the door. You look at it, Quintez Cephas is one of their number 1. He might be their number 1 wide receiver right now. So they have to get weapons outside the passing game.
Okay, number 8. This is where the New York Jets moved down in Pete's mock trade when they traded down with the Panthers. So at number 8, Pete, you have them taking Justin Fields. And you already said you think that if they do this, if they trade down, that would mean another year of Sam Darnold. So you're saying basically you're going to give Justin Fields a year behind Darnold?
This isn't what I would do, by the way. In this scenario, they might actually, sit there and say, okay, we'll bring Darnold back, let him play for a year, and let this guy sit there like Jordan Love was going to sit for a while, or at least maybe if they thought it might not be that long behind Aaron Rodgers. Well, this would be a situation where Darnold would play. It would give Fields a year to get acclimated to the NFL, and then he would go in there. And by the way, watching the tape on all these guys, Justin Fields is right there with Zach Wilson, if not ahead of him. Going back and rewatching them and watching and studying them play, this kid is a talented, big, strong-arm quarterback who can move. And people ping him because Ohio State quarterbacks haven't had success. And I don't buy that. Yeah, there's times when he locks onto his receiver, but they all do. So I think there's a clear separation between Justin Fields, Mac Jones, and Trey Lance. I think he's clear number 3 and maybe will be number 2.
You buying this at all, Ryan, with the Eagles, or the Jets rather, trading out of that number 2 position where they could have taken Zach Wilson, getting down, getting some more picks, and getting Justin Fields?
Yeah, Pete says he wouldn't do this in terms of taking the quarterback at number 8. I love it. I actually do. It hadn't occurred to me. And then as we're going through this, I like the idea, number 1, of the Jets trading down. I think most of us are on board with that idea and stockpiling picks for a really bad organization. But if Justin Fields is sitting there at 8, you don't have to rush him onto the field. Sam Darnold can play for another year. You can truly find out what you have in him. Maybe you end up trading Sam Darnold at some point if you think it's time to move on and you're happy with the progress Justin Fields is making. I like it a lot. And I think Pete is exactly right. We're at the time of year where you're trying to find something wrong with every single player. Justin Fields is special. Maybe he needs another year of seasoning, but remember, Trevor Lawrence played 3 years, and he struggled, Trevor Lawrence did, early on in his sophomore year. Justin Fields has basically played 2 years, so I would imagine he's going to take another huge step in his development in year 3. He'll be an NFL rookie at that point, so wherever he lands, that's great news for that NFL team.
Okay, so a bunch of quarterbacks, a bunch of pass catchers, all offense so far in Pete's mock draft until we get to number 9 and the Denver Broncos taking Patrick Surtain, the quarterback. Ryan, what do you think of this in a division where you're going against Patrick Mahomes and you're going against Justin Herbert?
Yeah, so one train of thought is, okay, we have Drew Lock. Are we sold on him? And that's something that the new front office will have to figure out in Denver. And if you're like, okay, we can roll with him for 1 more year, you definitely have to upgrade the defense. You could go edge rusher here. Maybe it's a little high for an edge rusher if you're moving on from Von Miller. But cornerback is a huge need. I know Pete likes Surtain more than I do. Surtain is 1B for me. Caleb Farley's a 1A. But again, it's a half a dozen. You're feeling a huge need in the secondary. He has tons of experience. He was the best cornerback this year on that team in Alabama. He was the best cornerback last year on that team in Alabama. That included Trevon Diggs, who ended up getting drafted by the Cowboys. He's played in a big system against some of the best players in the country throughout his career. And oh, by the way, his dad was an NFL's longtime player, and he has that to lean back on as well. So it's a guy you pencil in. He can play right away. You know what you're going to get. There's no projecting how good he'll be because he's shown how good he is throughout his Alabama career.
Yeah, I think they need to get better in the secondary at cornerback, particularly when you look at that division. I mean, you mentioned it, Mahomes and Herbert. I mean, those guys, and even Carr, they can sling it around a little bit, so they have to get better at corner. I prefer Surtain over the other corners. And the reason being, I think he is so well coached. And I'm glad Ryan mentioned Farley because Caleb Farley might have the special ceiling. You know, I mean, his ceiling might be higher, but there's always a chance that he never gets to that. I think you're going to get consistency all the way across from Patrick Surtain, which is why I think he's the safer of the 2 top corners in this draft.
And then you have Farley going number 10 to the Cowboys.
And the Cowboys need corner help. I mean, you look at their corner situation, they got 2 unrestricted free agents. They need to be better there anyways. And I think Farley, with that athletic ability, could step in and play right away. Remember, he didn't play last year. He opted out. So, you know, some of these opt-out guys, you got to go back and watch 2019 tape, and he was a heck of a player. But I just think that he fits with the Cowboys. I prefer Surtain first in terms of the corners.
Okay, that's the top 10 in Pete Prisco's second mock draft. The draft coming up at the end of next month. When we come back, we'll get to the teens. 3 quarterbacks taken to the top 10, but Trey Lance is out there. So is Mac Jones. Where are those guys heading? Recapping 1 through 10 in Pete Prisco's second mock draft. The Panthers trading up to number 2 to get Zach Wilson. The Jets going back to 8th and still getting a quarterback, Justin Fields, in that 8th spot. Those first 8 players taken in Pete's mock, all offensive players, most of them at skill positions. We've got Pete Prisco with us. We also have Ryan Wilson, and we've got the Giants up at number 11, Pete. They tagged Leonard Williams yesterday, and you have them taking another quasi-defensive lineman, the edge rusher Kwity Paye out of Michigan. Yeah,
and again, this is a guy that his numbers don't translate to what he was, I don't think, as a defensive player on that team last year. I think it was 2.5 sacks, should have more than that. He's a better player than that. There were a lot of pressures, and the Giants have edge rush issues. I mean, they can't rush the quarterback consistently from the outside. They would be using him in a different way. He'd have to stand up in some situations, which I think he can do, but I think Paye would make a lot of sense to help their pass rush.
Yeah, Pete talked about Leonard Williams. He led the Giants with 11.5 sacks on the interior. Next on that list, Dexter Lawrence, who might weigh 500 pounds. He had 4 sacks. So that's not how you want to get after the quarterback in the middle of that defense. Third on the list was Kyle Fackrell with 4 sacks. He's a free agent. So this makes a ton of sense, especially if all 3 of those wide receivers are gone and Kyle Pitts is off the board and you're not tempted to take a wide receiver or a tight end to help out Daniel Jones. Kwity Paye is my favorite pass rusher. Pete talked about the lack of experience, but the high upside physicality, and that's what gets your attention. I say it all the time. I watched him over the summer, and he looked like a day 3 developmental guy with a ton of upside. And then you watch the time he flashed during the 2020 season, especially that Minnesota game, and you saw a guy who had made some strides in the right direction. And I don't know if he'll be the first edge rusher off the board, but I think he'll be one of the first to go. And I think New York makes sense all day long, given all their issues getting after the quarterback off the edge.
All right, we only had 3 quarterbacks go in the top 10 of Pete's mock. I think Ryan had 4 in his top 8 in his latest mock. But at number 12, you've got the San Francisco 49ers going with not Mac Jones, but Trey Lance.
And this would give him an opportunity to allow Jimmy Garoppolo to play this year and let Trey Lance learn. Because I don't think Trey Lance is ready to play right away. He reminds me of Steve McNair, and it took Steve McNair a little while to get going. This kid is big. Trey Lance is big, strong, physical, and has a rocket for an arm. But he has times where he's inaccurate. There are times when he doesn't look like he's quite comfortable in the pocket. But he is an intriguing player, and he can move, getting outside the pocket. He's big and strong, and my comparison for him would be Steve McNair.
But if you're going to get Steve McNair, wouldn't you then argue that he should go number 2 overall behind Trevor Lawrence if he's going to be that good? Steve McNair was really good.
I didn't say he's that good. I mean, yeah, you give these comparisons, you don't necessarily say they're going to be that good. I think Trevor Lawrence is a generational quarterback, but if he's as good as some of those guys we compare him to, like John Elway, then that'll be saying something. So, yeah, I just think he's going to need some time. He didn't do a lot of things in that offense. He could run, he could move, but they didn't do a lot of pro-style passing concepts in that offense. So it'll take time. I think he'd be good in that Kyle Shanahan offense.
Yeah, and Pete makes a good point about the comparisons with Steve McNair. McNair went to Alcorn State, and there were questions about coming from a Division I AA at the time and making that transition. Clearly, he made it. The same deal for Trey Lance, who played at North Dakota State, the FCS program. If he had played at LSU and played this year, I think he could very easily be the number 2 pick. We just haven't seen a lot of him, and that's the concern when you're making such a high draft pick and you want to try to project what he's going to be. There's also some consequences if you don't get it right. We see the Bears sort of dealing with that now. But I think Trey Lance has a chance to be really good based on those physical tools. He is incredibly smart. I had him also going number 12 to the 49ers. I think if anyone can make him work quickly, it's someone like Kyle Shanahan. We saw Kyle Shanahan have success with RG3 back when he was the OC of Washington football team. I think that Trey Lance is a better player coming out than RG3 was, and RG3 ended up being going 2nd overall behind Andrew Luck.
Okay, so we're 12 picks in. Mac Jones still on the board. We'll find out if Pete Prisco has him going in the first round at all. Not at number 13, though. The Chargers obviously don't need a quarterback, but you've got them picking up somebody who can protect Justin Herbert in Christian Darrisaw. Why do scouts seem to like him more than draft analysts?
Well, the personnel people like him more than the draft analysts, and yeah, they do. And I don't know why, because when you go watch his tape, there's everything to like. He's not the greatest finisher, and I think that concerns some people. He gets on top of a guy, and he doesn't, drive him into the ground like some of the other guys do. For example, Rashawn Slater drives guys into the ground. He's much more physical from that standpoint. But you're talking about a guy who can do so many different things. I love this kid. I think there's a great block right there in the run game. He can do it all. He's great in pass protection. And we talked to Quincy Roche last week from Miami, and Quincy Roche said he's the best tackle he faced. And I went back and watched that game. Quincy Roche is probably going to be a 2nd-round pick. He dominated Quincy Roche. So I think he'd be perfect for the Chargers to step in and play left tackle for a long time.
At number 14, another offensive lineman, Ryan. Pete has the Vikings taking Rashawn Slater. You also had the Vikings taking an offensive lineman in your latest mock, going with Elijah Vera Tucker.
Yeah, I like Rashawn Slater a lot. Pete knows I like him second behind Penei Sewell. I know Pete likes Darisaw, and I don't think you can go wrong with either player. And I would throw Vera Tucker in that conversation as well. The thing you get out of Vera Tucker and Rashawn Slater in this instance is the versatility. Rashawn Slater played tackle. He had his pro day the other day. I think his arms measured 33 inches. And when you talk to NFL folks, that's too short, quote unquote. Jonah Williams had short arms. I've talked to NFL offensive line coaches who don't care about short arms. Some of them do. It's all about your technique. And Rashawn Slater didn't play this year, but you go back and watch 2019, he played at a high level consistently. And Pete just talked about how he finishes blocks. He plays with an edge. You see him spelling there, but when he gets on the field, he can be nasty. He did better against Chase Young in 2019 than any other offensive lineman that I saw. And that certainly leaves a message to NFL teams that are looking to fill needs, not only at tackle, but also he can kick inside the guard. There's conversations there. He worked out at center during the opt-out. So that versatility is something that's attractive. And certainly in Minnesota, where they need to get better along the offensive line, that would make a lot of sense for Rashawn Slater to land there.
He's a tough kid. He plays with a nasty streak, and I do think that he's a guard, though, and a lot of teams think he's a guard. And so when you look at it from a pure tackle standpoint, you mentioned the short arms. I think they're 33 and a half, isn't that what they were? He has short arms. That's
what's a normal arm that you want?
35.
Okay.
Yeah, he's got short arms, and that's a concern. So a lot of teams say move him inside and let him become Quentin Nelson. I mean, think about that. You get a dominant guard inside, and he moves like a guard. That tells you how athletic he is. I just think Darisaw is a better left tackle prospect, but this kid's nasty. He plays with a mean streak. The one thing I did notice in watching him on tape, he sets wide, and guys come underneath him sometimes with their quickness. And in the NFL, they will eat that alive.
You were an all-state guard, weren't you? How long were you on?
And I was nasty.
What are you on? About 26 inches?
Yeah, but I was nasty. They were good at getting in guys' throats. Let me tell you.
That was when they let you bite people.
Oh yeah.
In football when Pete was playing, eating the salt tablets in the 100-degree heat down here in Florida. Number 15, Ryan, the New England Patriots, and Pete has him taking the edge. Gregory Rousseau out of Miami.
You put the visual in my head, Chris. Now I want to see Pete Prisco go up against Gregory Rousseau in some pass setting drills just to see how that would work out. 6'7" against, I'll give Pete 5'8", so it's the college book there. So Gregory Rousseau, here's the question I have about Gregory Rousseau, and Pete will probably have something to say about this as well. He opted out this year after getting the 15.5 sacks in 2019. He's a little thin. Now he's 6'7", 240, 250, whatever he is there. He's going to have to add some weight, but he's not built like Jalen Phillips, the guy who followed him at the University of Miami and also wore the number 15. Now he can get after it. You don't get 15.5 sacks by luck, but a lot of those sacks came on the inside. And I do wonder, now that we've gone through a whole 2020 season and we've seen some of these other edge rushers play, and we just talked about Kwity Paye and how it did him a benefit to play, and how he improved over the course of the season. The questions about Gregory Rousseau are he's inexperienced. He's a former wide receiver. He hasn't played a ton, and he's not particularly thick from the waist down. So can he put on weight? Can he rush off the edge? And that consistency makes me wonder. And the other thing I'll wonder about as well, with a quarterback on the board and a quarterback from Alabama on the board, we know Bill Belichick's ties to Nick Saban. I wonder if they think about a quarterback here too.
Oh, that would be Mac Jones, who's still on the board for Pete Prisco.
It's driving Ryan crazy that I haven't had him drafted
He's
yet.
Sitting in that figurative green room, just kind of wilting away like Aaron Rodgers and Brady Quinn back in the day. Number 16, you got the Arizona Cardinals, who went out and got J.J. Watt in free agency. Patrick Peterson might be gone, so Pete, you've got him taking a cornerback in J.C. Horn.
Yeah, and they need to upgrade at cornerback, whether Patrick Peterson's back or not. He's on his last legs. Don't tell them I said that, but he is. He knows it. Patrick knows. He's a smart guy. They need a young corner. They got Murphy there. He's going to be a good player, but I think, you know, when you look at J.C. Horn, his dad always had an attitude, Joe Horn. You know what J.C. Horn does? He has an attitude. He'll get in your face. He will get after you. I like J.C. Horn a lot. Again, he opted out halfway through the season. Some people will look at that and say, oh, I don't like him doing that, but it doesn't bother me one bit. I think he's going to be a big-time corner in the NFL.
See what his touchdown celebration is the first time he gets a pick 6. Number 17, Vegas Raiders. Ryan, they have linebacker issues. Pete has them taking linebacker Micah Parsons.
Yeah, they have defensive issues, so they could literally take anyone here who plays defense and make that team better. But Micah Parsons is special. And Pete mentioned it in the write-up on CBSSports.com. The off-field issues may see him fall, but in terms of talent, he's probably a top 5, top 7 player. Opted out in 2020, but he is a sideline-to-sideline prototypical off-the-ball linebacker. He can probably line up on the edge and rush there if you want him to. He is that athletic. He is incredibly strong for his size. He'll probably run a 4.4 something when he gets around to his pro day, and that's exactly what this Raiders defense needs. Pete tweeted the other day that the front office hasn't done a great job of drafting guys in Las Vegas, and they need to fix that because we just talked about it. You play in a division with Patrick Mahomes and now Justin Herbert. You can't give up 40 points a game and expect to win consistently in the AFC West.
All right, to the AFC East, and the Miami Dolphins with their second pick in the first round after taking Jamar Chase third in Pete's latest mock. You got to take in Zayvon Collins, who was voted the best defensive player in all of college football last season.
When you look at the Bill Belichick tree and what they desire in their defensive players, it's guys with versatility. And you can do so many things with Zayvon Collins. He can line up and play inside, which he did in college. There are a lot of teams and a lot of personnel guys who think he would be an outstanding 3-4 edge rusher. And so when you look at what Brian Flores has in his defense, they let Van Noy go. He's gone. They need to get another linebacker who can give them versatility up and down the line. So I love Zayvon Collins. He's one of my favorite players in this entire draft. He'd be perfect for the Miami Dolphins.
You had a ton of pass catchers going first 8, 9 picks or so. Now at number 19, Ryan, he has Washington taking Rondale Moore, the nice toy that some offensive coordinator is going to have next year in the NFL.
And no one is happier about this than Terry McLaurin, who has been doing all the heavy lifting for Washington in recent years because they have no one else in terms of playmakers down the field. You do have Antonio Gibson in the backfield who had a good rookie season, but they need more help. We'll see what happens with the quarterback situation and whether they try to find one in free agency. I see that Mac Jones is still on the board, so we know how Pete feels about that, whatever. But Rondale Moore is special. He only played 7 games the last 2 seasons. He's only 5'9", but he recently had a 42-inch vertical that we saw all over social media. He ran a 4.3 something when he was being recruited out of high school, so he can absolutely fly. But the only thing is the size and the weight. You don't see a lot of success historically in the NFL with players like this. I went back and looked since 2020, players who ran at least a 4.45 and jumped at least 36 inches and were that short, 5'9" or shorter. One guy comes up in terms of being a Hall of Fame type player, even a high level type player, and that was Carolina Panthers and Baltimore Ravens wide receiver Steve Smith. Now, if you get that, home run, but there's a list of other guys on there, and you wonder, okay, maybe it makes sense to target something else in the first round and circle back later and get a player like this.
All right, let's finish things up here before we get into the 20s with number 20 and the Chicago Bears taking an offensive lineman, Tevin Jenkins. Ryan, the Bears need help on both lines.
Yeah, he's nasty. He is absolutely playing with an edge. He played a little left tackle. He can also primarily play right tackle. And if you want an idea of the type of player he is, and Pete's, this guy will show up later on Pete's list, the edge rusher, Joseph Asai out of Texas. He manhandled him all day last year in that matchup. Here he is going up against Tulsa and Zayvon Collins. He is a playmaker on the edge. He plays with a tone. That's exactly what the Bears need. They also need a quarterback. One still on the board, whatever. But if you're whoever you get to play quarterback, you have to protect that person. Mitch Trubisky would love to have this sort of protection. I love Tevin Jenkins. I love him as a first-round pick. I have no issue with this whatsoever.
Yeah, if Ryan could just jump in and make a pick here, I think he would.
Oh, he'd race the card to the podium.
But Mac Jones is still on the board as we head into the 20s. Jenny Dell is going to take over for the rest of this first-round mock from Pete Prisco. Mac Jones is going to go somewhere in this first round. Where does he end up? Find out next.
So we're mocking it up with Pete Prisco and Ryan Wilson. We got Pete Prisco's mock draft right here. And as you can see, they just went through the top 20 picks. We're taking a look at 11 through 20 right there. Names like Trey Lance going 12th overall with the Niners, and Micah Parsons headed to the Raiders at 17. We are here to keep going on the list. So we're going to welcome back Pete and Ryan. All right, Pete, in the latest mock, the Indianapolis Colts selected former wide receiver Kadarius Toney with the 21st overall pick. That's what you think. Why is that?
Well, you look at their receiving group, and if T.Y. Hilton were to leave, and he's an unrestricted free agent, they need to get some speed. And Kadarius Toney, I don't know what he clocks at in the 40, but boy, he plays fast. He's a tough kid. He can play in the slot. He will take the shots in the middle of the field. So I think he would be a great addition to that group. And remember, they have a whole new direction they're going in with Carson Wentz at quarterback. Get him some weapons. Even if T.Y. Hilton were to come back, he's getting older. He's 31, I think, this year. So get a young weapon in the middle of the field for Carson Wentz.
Yeah, the Colts need to surround Wentz with as much talent as possible there. Now, at number 22, Azeez Ojulari is a name that Tennessee Titans fans have heard off quite a bit this season. Pete, what do you like about the edge rusher out of the University of Georgia?
I think this kid is just scratching the surface on what he can be, and he plays hard, tough. He holds up against the run. I think he's going to be an improved pass rusher once he learns the little tricks of the trade. Fundamentally, he lacks some of that, but he's going to get there. He is such a special athlete. I tell you what, Tennessee had 19 sacks last year. That was one of the all-time lows for a team that went to the postseason. This kid will really juice up a pass rush that needs it.
High on it. I like it. All right, Miami edge Jalen Phillips is one of the best pass rushers in the 2021 NFL draft. So, Ryan, why do you like him for the Jets?
Yeah, in fact, Jenny, he could end up being the first guy to go if he were completely healthy, and that's the big concern. He started out at UCLA, actually retired because of injuries, has had some concussion issues, but he came to the U and absolutely balled out this year. He had 9 sacks, played better over the second half of the season, and he's built like a defensive end, like an edge rusher, like you want him to be. He can play the run, he sets the edge, he can get after the quarterback, he's impossible to block, and I think if he clears the medicals, he's a guy that can go higher than this, but that's the issue. How healthy is he? How healthy do you expect him to stay in terms of durability concerns? If he checks out, I feel like he's a top 15 pick, maybe the first edge rusher off the board.
There's so much Mac Jones talk, and here we have it. Number 24, you have the Bama quarterback going to the Steelers. So, Ryan, first, I want you to break this one down for me.
Finally, Pete made my dreams come true.
Yay!
I'm like the biggest Mac Jones
I did
homer.
it for you.
Thank you. And double win for me. I'm a Steelers homer as well. So this is best case scenario if you're a Steelers fan. Maybe you want offensive lineman, maybe you want a running back here, but you absolutely have to have a quarterback. I like a lot of what Mac Jones does. Clearly, people tell you more than almost anyone in the media and even some folks around the league. But I think in the right situation, he has a chance for success. And if he lands in Pittsburgh, I think they think long and hard about taking him number 1. But if he ends up here, what do? You go out and you draft. Every other pick is either an offensive lineman or a running back to help him out, because it has to be the right situation for Jones to have success. He's not going to run the ball like Justin Fields. That's not his game. He moves well inside the pocket, but that's where it ends. But he's incredibly accurate. He's incredibly accurate down the field. And you put playmakers around him, and the Steelers have plenty of playmakers, and protect him a little bit, and then you're on to something. And finally, you go from having a 39-year-old quarterback to having a young quarterback who played really well, and in my opinion was better than Tua at Alabama, even though a lot of people seem to disagree with that.
I don't disagree with that as terms of him being better than Tua, but I wasn't as high on Tua as a lot of other people were last year. Mac Jones is a good, smart quarterback, but the NFL is moving to a league where they want guys to make plays off schedule. And there are a few exceptions. Tom Brady's one of the few left being able to do it, but he's Tom Brady. I think, though, in Pittsburgh, you let Roethlisberger play this year, Mac Jones sits and watches and learns, and then Mac Jones takes over next year as the starting quarterback. I like Mac Jones. I've watched Mac Jones since high school. He's a Jacksonville kid. I followed his career closely. I hope he succeeds. But again, there are people in the league that I talk to that think he has a 3rd-round grade. They don't think he's a 1st-round talent. I think he's a 1st-round talent, but I think this would be a perfect spot for him.
And Roethlisberger is a good person to learn from, that's for sure. All right, we're going to keep it with the Crimson Tide now. How does Christian Barmore fit with Jacksonville at number 25?
Well, Jacksonville's going to get help on the defensive line. You heard Urban Meyer yesterday. He said, look, our team will be built from the line back. In other words, if you have to have good defensive lines to win in this league or win in any level, you have to have good people up front. They're transitioning to a 3-4 defense. They will play Josh Allen and Caleb Von Chason, who they picked up last year, on the outside as rushers. They need down players. They like Hamilton as the nose. I think you get another down player like Barmore. Here's the thing about Barmore. He is so intriguing. He played lights out in the big games. But the other games, there's some concern. He didn't show up in some of those games. Is that an attitude thing? What is it? Does he just get up for the big games? I think the talent is there to be a dominant down player in the NFL.
Maybe once you're in the NFL, you learn all the off-the-field stuff matters just as much. All right, now for the Cleveland Browns, there's been plenty of attention on what they're going to do with that 26th overall selection. D-end Joe Tryon. Ryan, your thoughts?
Well, if you want a young edge rusher to have success, you put him opposite Myles Garrett, and that's one way to do it because all the attention will go to Myles Garrett and those double teams, and you can be at the other end making plays. We talked to Levi Onwuzurike on the Pick Six pod, who's likely to be a first-round pick as well, and he could not talk highly enough of Joe Tryon. Both players opted out, but Joe Tryon is just scratching the surface. He's 6'5", 255-ish. Onwuzurike said he's more jacked than that now, based on his workouts during the opt-out campaign. I do wonder if maybe a more established edge rusher like a Boogie Basham out of Wake Forest might come in and contribute quicker, but Joe Tryon has tons of upside. I like him a lot. I like him as a late first round, early second round guy. And again, this class of edge rushers, they're only going to get better because there's no established Chase Young. These are all young physical guys, short on experience, long on athleticism, and Joe Tryon fits that bill for sure.
All right, well, after the break, Clemson running back Travis Etienne, he's known as a generational type player while he was in Tiger Town, but we want to know where he will fit in at the next level. That's coming up next on HQ. Well, it's happy hour here on CBS Sports HQ, and we are talking mock drafts, and it's Pete Prisco's mock draft. So here we have 21 through 26, from Tony at number 21 to Tryon at 26. We are locked and loaded to break down this 2021 NFL draft, and it's time for the mock to continue. Welcome back, Pete Prisco and Ryan Wilson. So now we are going to go to number 27, and former Texas standout Joseph Osai. He spent the last few months preparing for this draft. So Osai as the first round selection at number 27 going to the Ravens. Your thoughts? Let's go with Ryan.
Look, they need edge help for sure. Yannick Ngakoue is free agent. Matt Judon is a free agent. Their edge rush was on and off. Ngakoue didn't exactly provide the push they were hoping for. Osai is an interesting player. I mentioned Tevin Jenkins earlier having his way with him, but this guy might have the highest motor in this entire draft class. He does not quit on a play. He gets after it. You see him on the backside pursuit there. I have issues about his size. I wonder if he's strong enough to hold up at the point of attack consistently, but he's also learning the position, which is a theme with these edge rushers. He played inside 2 years ago. They moved him outside, and he exploded. So I expect him to improve. And he's a guy that you feel like can come in and have some success early in Baltimore, where they have to get better after getting after the quarterback.
We're going to go from Osai to Oweh at number 28. The Saints picking Penn State's defensive end Jason Oweh. Why do you like that?
You know, here's a guy, when this whole process started for me, because I watch a lot of games on Saturday, but when I talk to guys in the league now, I start getting more names, and his name kept coming up as a back end of the first round. So I went and watched him, and there is some ability there to rush the passer. And if you look at the Saints, how they're constructed right now, they have a good end on one side in Cam Jordan, but they need help because Trey Hendrickson is an unrestricted free agent. He's probably out with their cap situation being what it is. They still have Marcus Davenport. He hasn't been the player they thought he would be. So add another edge rusher. That showed up in a big way in their playoff loss. I think they need to get better rushing the passer.
I was doing some research on this too, and there were numbers from a well-regarded speed coach on a way there, and it said that he ran a 4.3840. So
be careful with these numbers.
I know. I'm just saying something to look out for. We shall see. All right, we're going to move on to number 29, Green Bay Packers. They're up at the number 29. So we've got Minnesota receiver Rashad Bateman to the pack. What do you think, Ryan?
They need help at wide receiver. You do wonder if they're ever going to draft a wide receiver in the first round for Aaron Rodgers. Rashad Bateman had a really good 2019 season, opted out, opted in. The 2020 season wasn't as successful, so you wonder about that a little bit. He looked a little smaller too, which also makes me wonder if he lost weight or just the number change from 13 to 0 made him look smaller. And the only issue I have with Rashad Bateman, he is incredibly tough. The separation issues are the ones that I have. He's not as dynamic as some of these other guys that are going in the first round, but he is a dog in terms of how he plays, play in and play out. I just don't know if he's going to have the consistency to get open, play in and play out. And that's why I like him a little more as a second-round pick. But listen, if anyone can throw you open, it's Aaron Rodgers, and he gives them a weapon, which is much needed along the wide receiver corps after Devontae Adams.
We're going to go to the big 3-0 now in the Buffalo Bills. Ryan, the Notre Dame guard Aaron Banks could be performing for Bills Mafia. Your thoughts on that?
I give Pete a lot of credit. No one has Aaron Banks in round 1. Aaron Banks for me is a day 2 guy, probably more 3rd round than 2nd round, but he gets after it. You just wonder about taking guards in the 1st round unless you're Quentin Nelson, who Pete alluded to earlier. But I like it. They have a need there, the Bills do. As Pete noted, they could lose both their guards. They do have Cody Ford, who played outside, maybe he kicks inside, but he is quietly one of the best offensive linemen on this class. Liam Eichenberg, who plays left tackle next to him, will probably get drafted higher. But Aaron Brooks balled out. This Pitt game is a really good example of that. They have 3 guys that are going to get drafted. I give Pete credit for putting Aaron Brooks in there. I don't know if he goes in round 1, but it goes on day 2, and it only takes one team to take a gamble on a guy that a lot of us didn't have going there.
He's a better player than Eichenberger is. He is, and I like Eichenberger. I think he's a good player at left tackle, but Aaron Banks is a better player. And again, this is a guy. When in late December, I start asking around, asking personnel guys, give me some names of guys who are better than, they're being perceived right now. His name came up a bunch of different times. He is a mauler. He's nasty. He's tough. He's physical. He will be a back end of the 1st round, early 2nd round guy in this draft for sure.
I on Pete Prisco's list. Okay, we're going to move on to the 31st pick right now, and we have former USC offensive lineman Elijah Vera Tucker going to the Chiefs.
Yeah, and this guy will give them scheme versatility. He played guard early in his career at USC. They moved him to left tackle last year, and he did a really nice job there. I think he gives them position flexibility. If you look at the Chiefs, their tackles were a disaster because they got hurt in the postseason. They lost both of them. Mitchell Schwartz was out before the postseason. Then they lost Eric Fisher. They couldn't block anybody. Well, they hope those guys are going to come back, but if one lags a little bit, then you could play him at tackle. If they don't, then you play him at guard, and it gives you strength up front all the way across the board.
Okay, we're going to finish off with the Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the final pick for the 1st round. And Travis Etienne, this is a name we've all been waiting to hear out of Clemson, giving Tom Brady a solid weapon. Pete, why'd you put him there?
They need an explosive back, a guy who can catch the ball out of the backfield. Travis Etienne has become a really good receiver out of the backfield, and I think he would give them the air back that they need. That offense is high octane. They can throw it around. Leonard Fournette's an unrestricted free agent. Playoff Lenny had a good playoffs, but this guy gives you a home run threat every time he touches the ball. He is truly special. Quincy Roche from Miami said that he was the straw that stirred the Clemson offense. Think about that. He was the guy that made it go. Trevor Lawrence will be the 1st overall pick. That's how much he thought of Travis Etienne.
That is a huge statement right there. And thank you guys for joining us for Pete Prisco's mock draft and a little happy hour action here on CBS Sports HQ. For more in preparation for the NFL draft, check out the Pick 6 podcast, breaking down the latest news and action as we prepare for the draft in the 2021 NFL season. You got to listen and subscribe today. Well, thanks for joining us for Happy Hour, the mock draft on CBS Sports HQ. We're here all day, every day.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.